All right. Hey, thanks, Anthony. I'm pretty excited about today's panel. I know we talk a lot when you go to sessions like this. You've heard over the last couple of years, the on-demand enterprise has taken on a much different topic. You hear a lot about cloud, a lot about DevOps, a lot about business models. But I think we haven't talked about the employee side of the equation for quite some time. Millennials were a curiosity 3-4 years ago, so we were trying to figure out what that was all about. And then we diverted our attention to some of the emerging market technologies and the ability to scale tools. And I think we're coming back full circle. Those tools are not effective without the workforce associated with actually being able to drive them. And I'm fortunate enough today to kind of lead a panel and a little bit of a discussion around 3 fantastic organizations and how they're approaching the workforce and how they're putting things in place to make sure they've got a vibrant community and a much more engaging opportunity for some of the millennials that are coming out and others that just want to have more control over how their life is. So Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about this, and especially you're a very established organization, been around for 100 years, maybe more. And yet you continue to be a very disruptive force in the market. And I think I'd like to understand about how are you thinking about the workforce and what are you doing?
Sure. So we're doing a number of things. I think for starts, we really concentrate on the work-life balance. So we see that not only important with the younger generation, but really for the entire organization. So a number of things that we're doing. We're taking advantage of some office reconstruction that we're doing around the U.S. and in Montreal, down in Brazil, where we're introducing Flex Desk. So if you look at our office in New York, our office in Jersey City is, say we have a few thousand people in New York. Well, we will not have that many seats in New York. So what we will do is introduce flex desking. Besides our trading floor, no one gets a desktop anymore. Everyone gets a laptop. So we have 34-inch monitors, docking stations. You come into work, you grab a seat. One of the things that we're still figuring out is kind of a reservation system in terms of making sure that we have enough seats on a given day, but we're trying to leave that to the managers right now. So remote access, work from home, flex, work from anywhere. We actually have 0 BlackBerries in the US now. Everything is BYOD. And enabling the mobility, but also more and more applications, driven from anywhere and on the mobile. And one of the interesting things that we're looking at on the laptop is actually creating a bubble where you could put your private space. So someone has their work laptop, they've got a container in that laptop that says, this is where I'm going to put my Facebook or whatever applications, Instagram, et cetera, and this is where I can have access to my private life at work.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll learn more about some of the technology you're using to do that here in a second. But speaking of technology, your entire business model is built on this promise of a flexible work arrangement, right? And how do you bring people together?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're not quite as old as Societe. We're only 7 years old, but having a huge impact. And I think the fact is, when you look at sort of millennials and you look at Gen Zs today, in terms of what they want from a work experience, it's changed dramatically. They want to work from anywhere. They want to work when they want to work and how they want to work and for who they want to work. I think there was a study done several years ago about sort of the Gen Z and millennials that they actually didn't want to be speak louder. They actually didn't want to be an employee. They actually didn't want to be employed. They actually just wanted to be like on a part-time basis to be able to select who they want to work for and when they want to work. So Zoom is all about enabling people to be able to work from the device of their choice. We're platform agnostic, so whether it's Linux, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, mobile device, anywhere, we optimize network utilization, et cetera. And so it enables people to work from wherever they choose.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be on the other end of several Zoom sessions, and it is the end user experience is absolutely amazing. So you're doing a really good job. Doing a good job. Maria, this for you, it's a little different. I mean, we talk about a 100-year-old business that's kind of staying relevant and attracting new talent. We've got good tools that are making it happen. You've got a whole business model.
That's right. So For those of you who don't know Grubhub, especially New Yorkers, you probably know us by Seamless. So we are an online marketplace. We deliver food to hungry diners. So there's about 14 million folks around the United States who comes dinner time, they get hungry. And so they could order from about 80,000 restaurants around the United States. And we also have about 20,000 delivery partners that work for us. So speaking of millennials who want to organize their life around their own schedule, their own time, they could choose to come in onto our platform on demand for a few hours, do a few deliveries, unplug, go back to their home, and do whatever they want. The other side is the restaurants, right? The restaurants, too, they decide, okay, when do we have our kitchen capacity? You know, they come online exactly when they need additional demand, and then once their kitchens are busy or they're done for the day, they turn off. And so everything is obviously happening connected through our platform on our technology, but more about that later.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. You mentioned the concept, and this is really open for any of you. There's a certain part of the population today that don't want to be employed, right? They want to be a variable workforce. They want to go put their shingle up for a few hours a day. And Steve, I'm not sure, are you seeing any of that yet? Because I know we're starting to experiment with a little bit of AIG, but the whole concept of almost a 1099 employee, surge capacity, you need a handful of people with a certain skill set. Have you guys thought about that yet, or are you using anything like that?
We're not really doing that yet in terms of the part-time aspect. But one of the things that we're doing, which I think is interesting, is especially for the younger generation, what we hear from them is when they come to work, they have a role, they want mobility, and obviously we work on that, but they also want to innovate. So what we actually do is we've actually created, similar to other time off, that you're entitled to, so maternity leaves, things like that, is we actually have, and it's embedded in our HR system, Innovation Day time off.
Okay.
So we allocate to people time off for innovation. And that seems to be a big hit with especially the younger generation, is they can actually go in and get X amount of days a month for innovation days. So, and then the other thing I think is that, especially we kind of call it our junior program, is we actually just had a presentation by the junior program where they've actually formed some consulting groups where we can go to them and engage them in some of our projects, and they're bringing that view that maybe people like me don't have. And so that's very interesting, and I think they find that very career rewarding.
And these are consulting groups, internal teams that self-organize?
They're not dedicated consulting groups. They're people that have a role, but the junior population has come to us and said, outside of our role, we will allocate time, even after hours, to actually help you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, between that and the fact that people are going to be asking for innovation time or days, is there a process you have around governing that, and how do people get selected for an opportunity like that?
It's available to everybody.
It's available to everybody.
So is this similar to like the Google days?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Google Innovation Days?
Yeah, exactly.
When we were at KPMG, when I was at KPMG, we did something very similar to that and had those sort of innovation days for professionals to sort of experience or experiment or to investigate a new technology or a new capability or just an idea. And that was proved to be very successful.
So on your platform, are you seeing, are there any particular companies or situations where you're seeing people leverage your technology in a fashion like that, where they're able to bring a virtual workforce together and yet still somehow have that in-the-room experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very immersive experience. You used it, so
Yep.
you know. I can't talk about specific examples, but if you look at like what we're doing in telemedicine as an example, where we're using 2 cameras, and then we're so you can actually get a perspective of what's actually happening, and then the second camera can be much more invasive from the internals, so to speak, without getting into the graphic images of it.
Wow. Yeah. Maria, when we talked a couple of days ago, one thing I really walked away with was not only the virtual model that you have in your entire business, but you mentioned the topic of kind of a caregiver that kind of makes sure the ecosystem is working.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah.
And because I think the rest of us can leverage the same type of concept to be able to more effectively manage the organizations.
Right. So let me first start by describing what happens when a diner, a person who's hungry, comes online and makes an order, right? So they come online, they find a restaurant that they like, and they select what they want, they say submit. At that point, actually, the order has to travel to the restaurant. And unlike other e-commerce companies, we don't have a warehouse where all the food sits around. We could package it and send, right? We have actually, on the other side, an Internet of Things. It's a number of restaurants, thousands of restaurants that are plugged into our system. Making sure that the order makes it to the restaurant is relatively complex because technology could have things, network outages and all that, but more importantly, the kitchen is busy. It's hot, people are running around, they're cooking, they're not, looking necessarily at the POS system or at their tablet, right? And so to make sure that the order made it to the restaurant and the restaurant saw it, confirmed it, said, yep, we're gonna make it, everything's gonna be by this time. And then at the same time, we actually have to send a driver to pick up the order. The driver needs to come in just as the food is ready, otherwise the food is going to be soggy or the driver is going to be wasting their time if they got there too early. So everything has to line up. There's actually a lot of things moving at the same time. And so naturally things go wrong sometimes. Sometimes order could get stuck somewhere or driver is late or the food is late. And so we actually have a system that monitors every single order. We have this concept that's called flawless orders, which is the desired state of the order, no flaws whatsoever. But as soon as something goes wrong, the order comes on the screen and we have care. So it's actually not a three-sided, it's a four-sided marketplace. We have care folks that are looking at these orders and making sure everything is fine. And if it's not fine, they proactively engage and make sure to resolve those issues. So that's how you bring technology and people together to make sure that it all connects and works.
And how many times a day? You mentioned a pretty large number, I believe.
So on average, we place about over 400,000 orders a day, or our diners place over 400,000 orders a day. So this is across the United States and some in London, and there's about 1,600 markets in the United States. And by market, I don't mean Manhattan. Manhattan actually has about 12 markets in it. So it's each sort of like tightly populated area with drivers and restaurants and diners together.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Steve, are you guys starting to is artificial intelligence having an impact yet on your business as far as operation elements, or have you started thinking about that yet? And what impact is that going to play in your organization vitality, do you think?
I think it's going to play a big role. And yes, we are. One of the things that we are into in a pretty big way is RPA, so robotic process automation. And one of the things that it's actually good news, bad news. We're empowering via these automation tools our end users, so it's not a centralized development in IT. But the good news, bad news is now we need to have a proper governance to say when this automation goes into production, we need to ensure that we actually have good governance around that.
Right.
So that you don't have it out there in the operations group, for example, and someone says, I have no resiliency, et cetera. I'm dependent on this now. But we've found some of this automation, especially with our operations group, has trimmed hundreds of thousands of hours in terms of efficiencies.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, and then the other thing is really from an IT perspective is in terms of our artificial intelligence layer, in terms of really predictive incidents or predicting outages, et cetera, is really looking at our historical data and being able to do more of a correlation analysis and using AI to enable that.
Definitely going to have a big impact on the organization vitality, I think, between that and the flexible nature of the workforce is going to really make us think differently. With that, I mean, what's the roadmap for Zoom look like? What are businesses not taking advantage of yet as far as unlocking capability, or what advice do you have for us as far as how we think about the technology to support this on-demand world?
Yeah, so well, obviously, we need everybody in this room to license Zoom. I mean, that's clearly clearly what we want. The utilization is going up dramatically. We see the numbers. We have over 1 million businesses signed up to our platform. We just crossed the 30 billion meeting minutes a year mark. So 30 billion minutes a year in meetings, which is the equivalent of 1,000 hours for every minute, for every hour of every day of the year, which is, sort of pretty staggering for a 7-year-old company. So, so this is, just I think that talking about things like augmented reality, virtual reality, intelligent automation, RPA. I was talking to somebody earlier this morning. The power and the capabilities that we have today are daunting by comparison to what we had just as little as 2 or 3 years ago. We've partnered now with IBM Watson, which is a great partnership, and I think that there's a long road ahead of us. I don't have everybody under NDA here, so I can't really talk about all the things that we're doing.
Andy said we're good. We're good. Yeah, go ahead.
But trust me when I say we have a great platform today, but where we're going is really, really, really cool.
Perfect. I look forward to seeing how that plays out. Steve, as we wrap up this particular segment, any parting thoughts or things we didn't touch on that you think you want to convey here to the team?
No, maybe stating the obvious, but I think we're introducing a lot of technology to attract talent, to engage with our, especially the younger generations. But at the end of the day, it's all about a culture change, and that's really the most important. So it's the type of things where it's not just putting technology in, but the innovation days, for example, that I speak about, that's where I think you really get the true engagement, is they see that the actual 100, 200-year-old company is actually transforming.
That's very exciting. That's very exciting. Maria, anything from your standpoint? I know we've talked a lot about your business model and how you're running things, but is there anything we missed that we want to convey?
So I think that the key thing on demand, and it's whether you have an on-demand workforce or you have an on-demand business, is to connect everyone together, right? So when somebody places an order, you want the diner, the driver, and the restaurant stay in touch, right? Throughout the whole process, you want the diner wants to know, where's my food? The driver wants to know, is the food ready? Should I be coming? And obviously there's all these touch points. But going to engineering or technology, right? If you have a distributed team working together from different sides of United States or internationally, you want them connected as well, right? So you want them to be on Slack, you want them to be on Zoom, you want them to be constantly talking, right? Because as soon as you break that connectivity, you don't really have, you don't have a workflow. It's broken.
Interesting. Yeah. I think as I reflect back on the last several minutes, I think it comes back to the old formula of people, process, and technology. I think we've got technology now that's going to unlock the art of the possible around keeping people together. From a people side, you're seeing the expectations of the workforce change. To how we open it. Some of them don't want to be employed. They want to have a life, and they want to work periodically, and they bring tremendous subject matter expertise, and you want to be able to tap into that. And I think understanding that people aspect and being able to sort that out, I think, is going to be important. And then, as Steve, as you mentioned, I think there's a whole process around it as well. You can't just crowdsource individuals, right? You got to have some sense of community around them, around how you do innovation days. I love your internal variable workforce around consulting that want to self-organize and bring creativity to a problem that may not be their responsibility, but they bring something or past experience to bear to resolve it. So I think that there's several things for those of you in the audience to think about as you leave this session and go back to your organizations and revisit with the things that are available now. What do you do differently? When you're going into your employee review cycles, or you're talking with the control groups like your finance organizations or HR organizations, how do you pitch this in such a way? Because there are things you're going to have to deal with as far as if I'm doing 1099 type employees, my HR organization is going to kind of freak out a little bit. And they're going to want to understand how does this fit in? So you're going to have to be very disruptive, and I think it's worthwhile. If you get organization vitality right, I think we will all be here hopefully 100 years from now and and be able to share our stories. So.
Yep. There's just one other point I wanted to make, which is I don't know if anybody's ever read or looked at the work from Albert Mehrabian around communications. And he did this analysis on communications, and communications boiled down to sort of three components: words, tone, and body language. And it's really interesting, the data on that. The data is very quickly, 7% of communications is words. So the actual sort of words that you speak when you communicate counts for 7%. The tone actually counts for 38%, and the body language counts for 55%. So rather fascinating data.
I can tell by your body language you're pretty excited about that.
Absolutely.
So
And it's so true.
I'm picking that vibe up here.
But it's so true. If I'm having a conversation with you and you're agreeing with me, you nod, right?
Yeah.
That's just natural, and that means you can go faster. And if you don't agree, you'll sort of do this, and
Yeah.
that means I have to slow down. So everything gets faster.
I love it. I love it. And I think that brings us full circle back to where we started. So want to thank each of the panelists for taking time out to share your insight. And I want to thank the audience for spending time with us this afternoon. Hopefully you got some value out of today's session. So thank you.